Hi, it's Dr. Michelson. Want to give just a little bit of intro and word of encouragement on how to do some exegetical work. Students often ask, how do we get started and what should we do? So here's three simple guidelines for doing some exegetical work. First of all, the most important task of doing good exegesis is asking questions of the passage, asking questions of the text. So you'll want to ask every imaginable question that you can come up with. Who's speaking? Who's not speaking? Who speaks the most? Who's present in the audience? What words are used? What words are reused? What words are reused in what ways? What words seem to be reused but maybe get changed? So, for example, if it goes from someone called someone to someone shouted at someone or something like that. Who's wearing what? Who's seated? Who's standing? What's the weather like? Which would only, of course, be true in some passages. Then those same questions would be asked of then the larger context. So when you read the context around a passage, you might say, in the passage that I'm examining, Paul is speaking or Moses is speaking, but prior to this, Paul hadn't been speaking, or Moses hadn't been speaking, or in the passage that I'm examining, Hannah is speaking, but Hannah hadn't otherwise been talking in the preceding or the antecedent passages, or whatever it might be. So the first task of good exegesis is to ask questions of the text. Who's doing what, when, where, why? How are they engaging? What words are used? What words get repeated? When someone says something, does someone else repeat it verbatim back to them? Or do they say something different, and what's going on with that? What sort of textures and nuances of all of the questions you could ask? The task of exegesis is to find out what's going on in a passage. So you want to ask lots of questions, and if you can't find the answers, look up the answers. Not everything in the passage is important. It may be the case that a particular verb is used for someone speaking, and that's just the verb that's used in every passage of the Bible. No big deal. But it might also be the case that there's a word play going on with this verb. Or it might be the case that in one passage the word for sin is used 5 times, but one of the times it's different. Why? Those are the kinds of questions you want to ask. What's going on? Who's doing it? When are they doing it? How are they doing it? What's repeated? Question, 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 question. It's the first task of exegesis. The second task of exegesis, and it's part and parcel to the first part, which is the questions, is begin to do research. In fact, I tell learners with regard to exegetical work, the process of doing good exegetical work is the process of read, research, repeat. Read the biblical passage that you've been assigned or signed up for. Ask the questions as you've already been assigned to ask them, and then begin to do research about the passage. Find out what other scholars say about this. See if they point something out that you might not have noticed, because you'll overlook stuff. We all overlook stuff. So then you'll do research, and after you do research, you'll find that Walter Brueggemann points out that the verb that's used in this passage happens to be the same verb that's used in another passage in Genesis, or another passage in Isaiah, or whatever it might be. And then do some research. Go back to your passage again and reread it. Reread it in light of the other passages that have been used. So you're going to read the biblical text, you're going to do research on it with a commentary, good journal articles, good resources, and you come back and repeat the process again. You'll read your biblical text again. You'll read it a little more nuanced now with the particularity and the peculiarity and the insight of whatever scholars you've read, and you'll read it again and see the new insight, and then you'll go read another commentary, and then you'll come back and read the passage again. And by the way, you don't have to just read a commentary and then read the passage again. You should always be reading and rereading your passage in its limited context, the pericope you're working on, but also in the context of the passages that surround it. And then, of course, the passages that are in the entire book. So, for example, in a passage like 1 Samuel 25, the story with David and Abigail, it's framed on both sides in 1 Samuel 24 and 26 with events of Saul trying to kill David. And actually 24 and 25 frame what happens in the middle chapter in 25. So even if you're assigned one chapter, sometimes you have to know what's going on in the chapters outside of it. And then, of course, what's going on in the larger book as well. So second goal is read, research, and repeat. The third thing that I give as a piece of advice for learners working on exegetical projects is something like this, and it ties into the first and second steps that I've already given. But since your exegetical paper will have a textual analysis and a literary analysis and a social, cultural, historical, contextual analysis, since it will examine the theological issues and then the hermeneutical issues, An idea would be to take a Microsoft Word document or even a piece of paper or journal notes, however you do it. And when you're reading through a commentary by Walter Brueggemann, or when you're reading through an excellent article that you found using the library's good peer-reviewed journal articles, and you read about how, I don't know, Terence Fretheim thinks something about a passage in Exodus. Take notes, but take notes in the following way. Create a page of notes for text issues. And you'll find one or two things that you discover in Brueggemann on text issues, and one or two things from Fretheim, or one or two things from N.T. Wright, or whoever it is that you're referencing and engaging. Take a page of notes, and it might become 2 and 3 and 4 pages on literary issues. Assign a page for historical issues. Assign a page for social cultural issues. Assign a page for theological issues. And as you're doing that read, research, repeat process, when you get good quotes and good insights on literary issues or historical issues or theological issues from whoever it is that you're reading it from, go ahead and copy and paste or type out the quotes onto this page. And then what happens is you actually have created the framework of your exegetical paper, because you have a whole page of notes, or maybe 2 or 3 pages, or maybe 4 or 5 pages of notes on literary issues. You have a whole page of notes, or 2 or 3 or 4, on social cultural issues. You have a page or several pages on textual issues and intertextual issues. You have a whole page of notes on theological insights. And then you might have a page or 2 of notes on hermeneutical issues. Well, in a way, your exegetical paper is now framed for you. When you sit down to write your exegetical paper, you'll take your insights of all the questions that you've asked, all the read, research, and repeat that you've done, and all of the insights that you've gleaned on textual issues and literary issues and historical issues and social cultural issues and theological issues and hermeneutical issues, and you will combine them together in your unique way based on the unique research that you've done, and you will assimilate all of that learning and all of that insight, and you'll produce a great exegetical paper. Well, I hope these insights give you some practical tools for thinking about doing exegetical work. If you think about it in the way I framed it, it's really a process. So don't wait too long, don't procrastinate, but it's really just a process of asking questions of the biblical text and doing some examination and taking some notes. Asking a question of the biblical text, doing some examination, some research, and taking some notes. Asking questions of the biblical text, doing some examination and some research and taking notes. And then after a period of time, you have all of your notes assimilated. And then, of course, you got to pull it all together. Make sure you cite and footnote and put your bibliography in place. But you are simply doing segments of research that are then brought together in a culminated final project that you can do with success if you just work on it a little bit at a time. I wish you all God's best.